bright. So they were walking along this path into the brightness, and it was very emotional for me and for everybody concerned. It, of course, generated a feeling of great joy. So these are some of the instances, and I could tell you many. I think I've had some 150 or so cases like this, and I've been through the death experience in so many ways. People that were hung, people that have been electrocuted, people that have had serious accidents, and in various ages, because these people, some have been trapped for a very long time. And you may ask, what evidence is there to support all this? Is it a figment of my imagination? Well, let me tell you of some cases where it was possible to verify. Did any of you see the 40-minute program on BBC Two called Ghost Train? Anybody see that? The haunting on the airfield. Well, I was taken by BBC to an airfield and not told where I was going. Arrived there at 9 o'clock in the morning with them. It turned out to be Linton-on-Ouse. I was told beforehand that there was a haunting on this airfield that had been very troublesome. The RAF wanted to do something about it, and the BBC producer concerned asked if I would go along with him. Turned out that this airfield was being used when we arrived. There were 40 Provost jets being used to train young pilots, and they were doing circuits and bumps. That is to say, they were doing a dummy landing on the airfield, taking off again, going round and so on, doing this all the time, very noisy. Some of the introductory shots we had to take 3 times because the noise was so high that they couldn't record it. But anyway, they led me then into the control tower where the haunting had taken place, introduced me to a young lady who was in the RAF, whom, surprisingly, the RAF had posted back to the station for the occasion. Turned out, when I was introduced to her, that she'd seen this ghost that was causing the bother, and seen him on 2 occasions. She'd seen him once, been rather alarmed, plucked up courage, went back some days later and saw him again. And he appeared on the landing, 2 flights up inside the control tower. He stood in a doorway. Others had seen him too. In fact, one of the RAF military police refused to go in that building at night, and it was things like this that was causing the RAF to take the matter very seriously. So all the offices around us were all being occupied because flying was going on, and the only concession they made, as far as I was concerned, was to stop people going up and down past me on the stairs. But I sat on the stairs, and I was wired up for sound. The cameras were there, and I tuned in, and I soon picked up a man, and I said, this wasn't wartime, as they thought. This happened in peacetime. This man was knocked down by a vehicle not far from this building. I think it was on the perimeter track. His back was badly damaged, and I could feel the pain that he felt. I was going through what happened to him, so I was able to describe this fairly accurately. And he was brought in on a stretcher, and he died in this building. When this was over, I went through the release with him. He was taken away, and again with great joy. But cut this long story short, at the end of it, I said, I wish it were possible to find out about this, to verify it. So they looked on the station records, which only went back 3 years, and couldn't find it. So the assistant producer went up to London, looked through the archives in London, something you couldn't do unless you had special permission to do it. She found that in 1951 a young man was knocked down on the perimeter track, as I'd indicated. His back and his pelvis were crushed, and he was put on a stretcher, and he died. And this was a pretty close fit to what I'd said. In fact, there was nothing that disagreed. But more than that, nobody ever saw that man again haunting that particular spot. I was taken along a little while later on the same airfield by the producer of the program, and he said, I want you to come along to this corridor. It was on the first floor of the officers' mess, a very long corridor. And he said, whenever the cleaner comes down here, she wants to whistle and sing. She feels very happy. He said, we know she's a bit psychic from what we've been told. Do you think, just out of curiosity, you could tell us why this happened? So I went along, walked into this corridor, and the opening into the corridor was near one end, and I turned my back to the window at that end and started to walk the length of the corridor, and halfway along I called out and I said, "Martin, I want to run. I don't know why, but I want to run." And then a few moments later I said, "There's a woman just run past me. She's gone to the end. She's met a man. They were in a strong embrace," and there was a great surge of emotion. So I said, "I don't know what this is about. Perhaps I'll find out." So I turned round, started to walk back, and it was all then coming. This was a wartime event, late wartime. The man had been on a flying mission, reported lost. His wife, who lived near the station, made up her mind to accept the worst. So in her mind she'd come to the conclusion, he's dead, he's gone, I must face up to this. 3 days later, as sometimes happened, because of the difficulty with communications being jammed up with so much communication traffic, but he finally turned up 3 or 4 days later, was debriefed, came out of the office where he was debriefed into this corridor. In the meantime, she was told by telephone, "Your husband's here." So you can imagine what this was like. As I walked back, I said all this. I said, "You know, Martin, I don't think this is a haunting at all." I said, "I think this is a psychic imprint." I said, "These two people could very easily still be alive." So we went back to the room where we'd been eating, and someone else said, "Could I come?" So I said, "Well, all right." So straightway I went back. As soon as I walked into the corridor, it all started up again, just like replaying a video. So I said, "Yes, this confirms it. It is a psychic imprint." And a lot of hauntings, you know, are of that nature. They are psychic imprints. They are the history of the event imprinted into the etheric level, and they will replay if you happen to be in the mood for it. It's not in the sense haunted by entities that are still there. Of course, in the battlefield there may still be one or two, but essentially it is an imprint. How can you tell the difference? Well, an imprint's like a video. It always does exactly the same thing. And if there are entities appearing in this imprint, as there very often are, you can't communicate with them. They will appear to look through you and ignore you, go their own way, and they're repeating, like the lady that walks up the stairs and vanishes at the top. Nobody can speak to her. She just walks through you and past you. But you see, she is a memory. She's an imprint. She is a video, a hologram, whatever you like to call it. We can see analogies for it. I could go on for hours. But would you like to ask questions? Because I think sometimes this is more interesting than me just talking. What in the next life? If you have a knowledge of survival, you are extremely unlikely to get stuck. If you are absolutely certain in your mind that there is no such thing as survival, and you have a death which is traumatic, then you might just get stuck. So a good safeguard is to understand what is likely to happen to you. Sorry, you want to know what happens afterwards. We normally go to a sort of an early stage, sometimes called the Summerland. It's well described in some of the books that I'm sure you can get hold of. And from there, after a period of sort of getting settled in, one moves on to a higher level, which is still very much idioplastic. That is to say, it responds to your state of mind and your thoughts, and you can construct, you can design, you have great openings for creative work. You can live out at that stage your great longings. If you've longed to ride a horse, you can do it. If you've longed to learn to swim, you can. If you've longed to sail a yacht, you can do it. These things are all possible. And after a time, when you've done this and you've got rid of the things that you have wanted to do all your life and felt a great yearning for, you can start getting down to more serious matters. And you find at that stage that you begin to learn. Some people stay at that plane of illusion level for a very long time, but nobody's